Welcome back to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast, a platform to showcase great people doing great work and talk about hot topics in residence life and college student housing. So, my name is Noah Montague, and I use he, him, his pronouns, and today I will be your host. If you've been listening to my episodes or watching my episodes a bit lately, I like to say that I am a storyteller by trade, and the stories that I happen to choose to tell center the student and the college experience. But with that, today we're actually going to be taking a little bit of a step out of the halls per se and talking about that how, as in how we even get into the halls begin with. How do we even get into the field, into these jobs? How do we do the work that we're doing? With that, we're talking about the job search today. Whether you like interviewing, you like traveling, you like spending hours on hours trying to find the exact right school to fit your needs, or you even hate the prospect of it, we all have to go through that job search at some point in our careers and in our lives. And because of this, it is so crucial for us to talk about what this actually looks like and have that honest conversation about our experiences in the hope to help other people going through that same thing. Which makes me all the more excited to welcome today's guest to talk about today's very topic. So I'm going to turn it over, DJ, to you to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Hi, I'm DJ Harris-Sumrall. I go by they, he pronouns. I have currently left the field of higher education and residence life and housing for a little bit, just for some family little fun things that happened. But I've worked as a hall director in adjacent roles at three different institutions in the past, and working on trying to get back into the field and just kind of going with the little ebbs and flows of that goes with it.
That makes sense. And awesome. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
that. I think that that for me was where I was so excited about getting to have this conversation with you and that you're re-entering it right now. So you get to kind of talk about that experience of what has it looked like and what it is looking like right now too. So
Yeah.
that makes me excited about what we're going to be talking about today. But I guess to get into that, and you've touched on this a little bit in talking about yourself and your experience a little bit so far, but DJ, could you tell us a little bit about what job searches have looked like for you in the past or right now?
Yeah, so in the past when I was starting to look fresh out of college, was an RA in undergrad, kind of had like no idea where to even start looking. So was planning on going to things like OPE and TPE, like that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
I put in my applications to a couple schools and typical like first time hall director, you get nothing. And so I just put in my application one day through OPE. I was like, okay, I guess we're going.
Hmm.
And got reached out and ended up being an emergency hire at a school. And I'm like, okay, this is intimidating, but kind of fun.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it the first time around. And then from there, it just kind of was more natural after you gain more experience, kind of like any fields where like you start gaining the experience, it's easier to get a job somewhere. But right now, I've been out of the fields for about 2 years right now, just
Hmm.
because I had to move home for some family stuff and trying to get back into the field, it's hard. Like
Yeah.
people are hiring, but because there's such the higher ed crisis, I like to call it from what I've heard from some friends, that
Hmm.
like everywhere is hiring, but nowhere is hiring, or like they don't like there's so many different like budget changes happening in every department. Like you never know if that posting's actually going to stay live or not. Like I've applied to a
Hmm.
couple different places and like the posting's there for like a week and then they're like, haha, nope, sorry, we had to cancel it. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
okay. That's understandable. So like right now it's been a little bit more challenging trying to be able to find places. So
Yeah.
like hireadjobs.com, that's been my best friend lately.
Hmm. Shout out higheredjobs.com. Not
Yes.
sponsored, but we do we do
Yeah.
love looking for a gig on there. I never experienced OPE or TPE, but I have a lot of colleagues who really did enjoy that. And it sounds like from your perspective, that really was your entrance
Yeah,
into the
like
field.
for my emergency placement, I never even made it to OPE. Like I
Yeah.
had signed up, was planning to go, and then got a random call from this department. And they're like, "Hey, you want to come interview with us? We saw you on OPE." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So,
Hmm.
and then TPE, I did that while I was at my last institution, more looking for places closer to home. But yeah, both of them were great experiences.
I'm really happy to hear. Like I said, I didn't do either of those, but I'm blanking on the verbiage of it. But there was a program like them that I was involved with when I was in grad school, and I did get, to your own point, several
Yeah.
calls at that point.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like, would you like to interview with us? We see you on this website. We need to fill roles. Are you interested? And it doesn't feel like that is happening
No.
anymore. The job search is definitely different now. Myself having I just actually got a promotion as well, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Having gone through that job search and being an internal candidate's an entirely different conversation as
Hmm.
well to like do that step up, and there's different pressures, but I think for me, the job search has also been very interesting, and my experience with it has varied. I'm from the Northeast originally. I work in the Midwest now, so the change and the travel involved in that job search, I don't think that we talk about that enough. That is, I work with a lot of students who end up going into student affairs just in like the habit of the leadership program that I oversee. A lot of them end up being, wait, I love this work. How do I keep doing it? And
Yeah.
something that I always talk to them about is I need you to be prepared to, if you're applying to 10 schools in different places around the country, I need you to be prepared to then have to go to those 10 schools.
Hmm.
And that's like an interesting thing, I think, to wrap one's head around. Because when I was looking at master's and at grad assistant work, I ended up flying all over the country to six, seven different schools because I wasn't conceptualizing that I was going to have to go to all of these places
Oh
to
yeah.
actually like figure out, okay, is this where I'm going to go? Is this how it's going to look? But the job search is definitely very different now. And I've felt it be different, to your own point, like the job being posted, but like, does that job actually exist? Like I've been
Yeah.
seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah. And like definitely building on your point, like I last time I had started interviewing, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna fly you out here." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Hmm.
And like for me, I started in the field more closer after COVID, where there still was like a lot of weird budget things going on.
Yeah.
So a lot of schools had moved over to more virtual on campuses. So like
Hmm.
the idea of flying out was kind of weird. And like when I was originally looking at doing grad school versus just diving into the field right away, all the schools were doing like complete virtual stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing was in person still at that point. So for me, like interviewing, it's kind of been an adjustment because like in my current role that's outside of higher ed, I have to make sure I have PTO for that kind of stuff. And like,
Hmm.
okay, hey, I'm gonna be out of state for a couple of days possibly. And it's just kind of different.
Yeah. And that's something that I don't know that I've really even considered because my most recent job search was internal. So I wasn't
Yeah.
looking at online. I was here already.
Hmm.
So the question of, is this going to be an online interview? Is this going to be an in-person interview? And can I even fit this into my life?
Yeah.
It is a question that I think that it's important for us to be asking, and that I
Hmm.
didn't have to in that
Yeah.
particular job search. But I think that kind of builds pretty well into the next question I wanted to ask you about, DJ, is like, in your mind, what should people, like, whether they're brand new to residence life, whether they've been in it for a while, or in your case, kind of returning to it, what should people be thinking about before they even start applying to these
Yeah.
jobs?
I guess one thing for me that's kind of like been more important for my search is like where can I see my family going? Like my
Yeah,
husband and I like we certain places, yeah, that's fun. Let's go there. Let's do it. But there's also like certain places that's like, okay, I'm not sure that's kind of our area to go to.
yeah,
And it's like kind of being more conscious of that kind of stuff is something that's important. Or like I know this one sounds a little weird, but for some people, like if you have pets or ESAs, like
hmm,
is that school like in the area it's in, is that a reasonable place for you to even look at? Like I have a dog and he goes everywhere with me, but like I've avoided working in bigger cities because like he's
yeah.
not a big city dog. Like that dude could never. But also just like kind of thinking about random stuff like that, but also then thinking about more like, okay, if I want to stay in higher ed, do they have a master's program I can work on because
Yeah,
I don't have my master's right now? Or like I would love to get my PhD or EDD at some point and like be I always like to joke and say be the most educated in my family at some point.
Hmm.
Like, do they have a program or do they offer that kind of stuff? Or like
Or
another
do they
thing.
offer support in even getting a degree like that?
Exactly. Like
Hmm.
that's a whole thing. And then like kind of thinking about do they offer relocation packages? Like there's
Yeah,
so many different random little things that like you don't always necessarily think of, but sometimes they're kind of taboo to ask about
for sure.
because like you don't want to go and ask that and then like everybody say, nope, you're not gonna get an interview. Because it's like we look in some of like the Facebook groups if you're in those and they're very quick to say don't ask these questions. But for some people, that's how they make it to the jobs. It's like
Yeah.
that's important questions to ask.
Hmm. I think for me, and like kind of going off of a lot of what you just said, I have a mentor that like I talk to here and there, Dr. Jamie Washington, who is amazing, and I had a great opportunity to speak with him at a conference recently. But he spoke about like his generation of student affairs practitioners versus now, and there
Mhm.
being this big shift in no, what is best for you as a human and your family
Mhm.
is worth considering in your job search.
Oh yeah.
And that is a shift. And I think that that's an interesting conversation in like what you're talking about in those being things in Facebook groups that are coming up and well, don't ask about that. Don't ask about those things because the folks who are doing those interviews are from a different generation of student affairs practitioners, and that's no shade to anyone. I
Yeah.
think it's just important to think about that because for me, like my partner and my kid come first, and I
Hmm.
have to pick a place that I think that they are going to flourish and be safe and be comfortable. And I love that you mentioned your dog as well. Like my
Yeah.
dog will not thrive in a city.
Yeah.
But she is a small town dog, and because of that, thinking about, okay, what is important to me in my life and what I need to be successful and happy and healthy, because the job of residence life professional is to support students through them learning how to be successful and happy and healthy.
Hmm.
And if we're not prioritizing that, then we can't properly do this work. So I think that that is important to be thinking about in a job search before you even start looking is what do you need to
Yeah.
be successful and be able to do the job to the best of your ability? But I also think like a little more feasibly, or not feasibly, but like functionally in thinking about okay, and this is a weird one, so stay with me. I can't work at a non-Google school.
Yeah.
And that's like that's a me thing. That's a thing that's important to me to think about. And what technology do I work well with? And what am
Hmm.
I familiar with? And what is going to help me be successful? But I think that learning about a school, learning about the area that you're going to, those are all things that people should be thinking about before they even start applying. Because if you're not looking at where you're going, you're not thinking about, okay, can I be successful in this place?
Yeah.
Because we're tied to living where we go.
Yep.
So I think that that is a thing that is crucial for residents and staff to be thinking about.
Yeah. And like that's all something like my mentor, Dr. Amari McGee, all like brought up when
Hmm.
I was looking the first time. Like she's like, okay, she's like at that point, it's just you, your cat, and your dog. You
Yeah.
can go about anywhere, but still think about these things. And then she gave me like a laundry list of things to think about. And then when I married my husband, she's like, okay, now that you're looking for that, here are more things
Hmm.
you should think
You
about.
have
She's like,
new things to consider now.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That she's like, there's so many different things. Like, if your husband wants to go back to school, do they offer that to your
Yeah.
partners? Like that kind of stuff too. And I'm like, oh, I guess I never really thought about that.
Yeah. And it's interesting to start thinking about it as
Hmm.
well. And it's also exciting in a way
Hmm.
to kind of get to do that kind of stuff. Hmm. No, I'm a rare human that doesn't mind a job search, but it's also
Yeah.
it is I'd rather not do it
Yeah.
at the same time. But anyway, with that though, thinking about the actual search and the interview in and of itself, because we're talking a lot about finding a place we want to go to, thinking about what's important to us, and then the actual interview comes. Should you be in that space to be
Hmm.
able to get into that part of the process. How would you suggest that candidates prepare for questions, particularly thinking about, we've talked a little bit about the state of higher education right now and changes we're seeing. And I know that I'm seeing a lot of things in student development, crisis management, and supervision being those main talking points.
Yeah.
So, how would you suggest candidates prepare for questions around those different areas?
One thing I would definitely say is research the school ahead of time. Um,
Sure.
like research be more than you think you need to know about the school. One
Hmm.
of the schools I worked at was a major research institution that like very high intelligent kids, and I'm glad I did a lot of research into that because I was able to talk about my crisis management in those
Yeah.
interviews because I guess I never really, it didn't dawn on me like how much crisis management you're going to do based off your student population.
Hmm.
Like, we worked with some of the brightest kids in the country at that school, and like, I did a lot of crisis management because they're burnt out.
Yeah.
They are overworking themselves and it just is a lot. And that was something my director of housing said at the time that I did a really good job talking about was crisis management. There was another school I had worked with and interviewed with that they were going through some major departmental changes where like they didn't know what the next day was going to look like for them. And programming was like their big thing. And
Hmm.
so I really just kind of was like, okay, this is the stuff I want to do. Like I want to put on a drag show for his drag queens.
Yeah.
And that was stuff like we talked about and like just being honest, be your authentic self with them, but also like know what you're talking about when it comes to that stuff. Like don't just go in and say, oh, this is what I want to do. No, be honest. Like
Hmm.
have fun, especially like if you're in a crisis management part and like you're getting asked questions about those, no one wants someone that's just gonna be like a door. No one wants
Yeah.
someone that's just gonna like stand there and do nothing. Like
Hmm.
have fun with it. Like be your authentic self in the interview so then they can see that that's how you're gonna be when a student's in crisis. Because no student that's in crisis is gonna want to talk to someone who doesn't care.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not gonna be that fun hall director that like, hey, you should come to my program stuff, or like in student development, like even having students come talk to you about life stuff, like, no, just have
Mhm.
fun with it. Be yourself and just let people get to know you.
For sure. I like to say with my students and like the RAs that I train, and because I also am very privileged to get to train staff on crisis
Mhm.
management in my current role. And you better believe I talk about that in interviews when I have
Mhm.
it. Um, but something I like to say is that if you are approaching a situation caring and showing students that you care, you're already doing 90% of this job.
Yeah.
And I think that that care goes so like underappreciated and under acknowledged because in interviews it's one thing to be like, yeah, like this is my experience, the end. It's
Mhm.
another thing to show them how you care about student development. It's another thing to show the interviewer how you care about crisis management. And for me that comes through examples. It comes through in this space, like I did this thing with this student, and this is what I learned from it, this is what they learned from it, and this is how I would implement it into this position. And to your own point, like understanding the job, understanding the school, I like to look into before I apply for any job, I like to look into what other offices exist on
Mhm.
that campus as well. So I can already have an idea of where I might send a student in a
Yeah.
crisis, where I might send a student in a situation for development. Does the school have an office about diversity and inclusion? Do they not? And that also might be something I look for in do I want to work at this school or not
Yeah.
as well. And I think that goes back to all of those spaces of giving those examples and knowing, for a lack of a better way to put it, like knowing what you might be getting yourself into and your honesty and your point of showing the interviewers who you are, because that is how you would approach the things they're asking you about. And that's where, for me, that comes and that matters in
Yeah. And
this.
like one thing like building on that that I actually asked in one of my last interviews was I had an institution that like our first month they took us to every single office on campus.
Yeah.
Like they took us to all the academic buildings, so like we could see everything. It was a
Hmm.
smaller institution, but it was still a lot of fun. Like I got to know people in other
Hmm.
departments. And so I was interviewing with a school not long ago and I'm like, "Okay, hey, do you guys do this?" And they
Yeah.
said no. They're like, "We don't really interact with other departments outside of our division."
And that
And
tells
I'm
you a
like,
lot about the
yeah.
institution.
And it's like, okay, so I was asking like some questions about like, what do you do if there's like a crisis? Or like, if we have a student that's like a military student that they need some extra support, like, do you guys work with the military office? And it was kind of shocking to hear that that's not always something that a lot of schools do.
Hmm. Yeah. I think asking questions like that gives you that further understanding of will this be a fit for me? But
Hmm.
it also gives an understanding of what resources are available to help you do the job that they would be hiring you to do. And I think that
Exactly.
that's important to consider. And we'll talk about like questions and what to answer, what to ask in an interview here
Hmm.
in a minute as well. But yeah, no, I find myself thinking about all of that when I
Yeah.
enter these spaces because again, it's one thing to tell them what you did, and it's another one to show them how you do it and how you would do it. And I think that is how I like to approach interviews in general.
I definitely love that star method for
I
those.
love me some star method.
Yep,
And it works. It
it
really does.
does.
And even on a personal level, like it helps you understand what you've done. And
Oh
it
yeah.
helps you understand what's important to you as a professional as well. So I can't advocate for the star method enough,
Yeah.
actually. Listeners, if you take anything away from this one, that might be my biggest recommendation. But thinking then about DJ, and that you've talked a little bit about that you're in the job search right now.
Hmm.
And we've talked a little bit about some of the things that have come up in that space. What is something that you think has surprised you about re-entering the job search? Or maybe what has been challenging, what's been easier than expected? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I guess kind of one of the things that I was a little bit more shocked by is like if you're in those Facebook groups or something like that and you're posting like, hey, do you guys have any advice and stuff like that? There's kind of a taboo against it some days about like
Yeah.
people that left the field and are trying to get back in. And I've noticed that it's from some of the people that are just burnt out and don't know what else to do. And it's been kind of intimidating some days to try to get back into the field. And like, it's a little scary because it's like anything that's negative. It's very vibrant, it's right in your face, but also it's just like when you meet the people that are in the field and like you get to connect with them and you're fortunate enough to get those interviews and meet the really cool people, it's
Hmm.
just kind of like, okay, these are the people I want to work with. These are the things that like I really want to connect with. And one thing that I've kind of found shocking was all this is like those schools either like those people or schools that have all those people like they either get all the applications or none of the
Wow.
applications. And so it's like sometimes they'll like you'll get through the process and then you'll like be a finalist or something like that and then they'll say, hey, I'm really sorry, we found someone a little bit more qualified than you. Or you just sometimes they'll ghost you too. And like it's kind of like I didn't realize how many times you'll actually get ghosted in
Hmm.
this. Like I had reached out to one of my friends that's still in the field. I'm like, hey, have you heard anything from any of these schools that you were applying to? And she's like, no, I got ghosted.
Yeah.
That's a really big thing
Hmm.
lately.
I've been talking to several of my grad students over the last couple of years, like now entering the field post
Hmm.
grad school and like just new professionals entering it, and how normal, or maybe normalized might be a
Yeah.
better word for it, how normalized it has become to never hear from an institution you applied to. And I
Hmm.
think that that is very interesting that we're in that space. And it has like having, oh, this is my ninth or 10th year in the field now. Um, and I've experienced a bit of that over time and not hearing back, but it definitely is on an uptick
Oh yeah.
in applying and never hearing, or applying and hearing months later. I recall a job that I applied to that I heard back a full calendar year later that they filled the position. And I'm
Yep.
like, I hope that you have by now.
Yeah.
And I think that that is an interesting thing to consider as we're entering this field, to a point that you made of there are so many residence life and student affairs jobs, and at the same time, it feels like there aren't. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting space to be in. I think for me, something I'm thinking about a lot in that I just finished a job search myself is how different how bills and how government changes and how things are impacting job searches
Oh yeah.
around the country, and what questions are allowed to be asked, what we're preparing for. And that makes it a little bit more interesting to figure out that is this going to be a space that I feel comfortable, that is going to be supportive of my identities, of my experience,
Hmm.
when neither party can really ask those questions anymore.
Yeah.
I think that that is one of the interesting things I'm noticing that's surprising me a little bit more than I'm navigating myself.
Yeah. No, I definitely have noticed that quite a bit in the
Mhm. The
process.
questions are different now.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm seeing a lot more. How do you go about building community? How do you go about building a community? Related questions than I've seen previously.
Yeah, like so I've worked in a lot of living learning communities over my
Yeah.
time, and like my I've talked about those quite a bit while I've been
Hmm.
interviewing in the past. And I feel like that's what's helped me in the past too, is because like I would like to say post-COVID, community is not a big thing anymore. And
Yeah.
like for colleges. Like I remember I started undergrad pre-COVID, like I was that desk cover, as I like to joke, that resident that never left the front desk because I was always talking to people. Or my RAs used to joke that I lived in my lobby. Like
Yep.
that was me. And then when I became an RA, that all changed. Like no
Yeah.
one was there because of COVID. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then becoming a hall director, like most of my buildings had little lobbies or like little pods on their buildings. And the only ones that really had people there was the living learning communities.
Yeah.
And like mainly, frankly, it was my rainbow pods, or as I like to
Yeah.
call them, or the gender inclusive stuff that like
Mhm.
had the more inclusive stuff. Like my tech ones or like other living learning communities I worked with, they really didn't have people out in there. And so like I'd always talk about like, okay, these are what I did in these communities. This is what I wanted to try in those communities.
Mhm.
But also it's just like it's kind of like, are they students actually going to listen to that stuff too, though?
Yeah. I think that comes into play in the job search for me as well. And what is the student population that I
Yeah.
would be serving in this role?
Yeah.
And thinking about, one, is that a population that I feel like I'm the right person to serve? Um, but also is what I know how to do going to work in this space? And
Hmm.
how would I adjust my approach if it doesn't? And I think that that honesty is also kind of important in an interview
Oh
of,
yeah.
yes, I am going to be doing something new in this role. This is what I've learned from what I have done, and this is how I would try to implement it here. And
Yeah.
I think that, again, like that how is such a different answer than this is what I've done, the
Hmm.
end. And I think it goes a lot further with the interviewers, in my
Yeah.
experience. No. But I guess then, DJ, to kind of start wrapping us up and kind of bring it all back, we've gotten pretty broad in conversation. I want to bring it back a little bit more close to home in what might be a piece of tangible advice that you have for new professionals entering the field or applying for their first job in residence life. What would be a piece of advice you'd give to a person in that situation?
Yeah. I guess I would just say be your authentic self.
Yeah.
Like, don't there's such a misconception that you'll hear from some of the older professionals that like you have to match what the school wants you to be. If that school doesn't want you to be who you truly authentically are, they're not a school you should work for.
Yeah.
You need to be your authentic self so then when you're working with the students, you're bringing your best self forward. And then you get to serve the students in the way that they need you to. I'm a firm believer that all higher ed roles can't exist without students because it's the truth. They can't.
Hmm.
And so just being your authentic self so the students feel like you're someone you can work with is really important. And honestly, another thing I always like to mention is just ask the questions if it's an appropriate question to ask.
Yeah.
Like, even if it catches them off guard a little bit by saying like, "Hey, what's your guys' take on this kind of stuff?" Like,
Hmm.
be comfortable asking that. Like, I asked a question one time, like, how do you work with students that have mental health crises? Like,
Hmm.
and it wasn't in a part of the interview where that's typically asked, but I wanted to know because that was something that was really important to me. Like, those are the kind of questions that I want to ask at every level.
Yeah.
And just be comfortable asking those questions and be your authentic self.
Yeah. I think I would completely agree with all of that. And I wanna second the idea of asking the questions that you want to know the answer to. I
Yeah.
think that that is an underrepresented important part of the interview process of if you want to know something that is going to help you make the decision of taking this job or not taking this job,
Hmm.
ask that question. Because you're not the only one interviewing. Like,
Oh yeah.
you are interviewing for a job, but they're also trying to figure out if you're a good fit for the
Yep.
job as well. And you're trying to figure out if they're a good fit for the job. So all of that has to come into play. And if there's a question that you want to know an answer to, it's important to ask it. So with my own recent job search, um, in my current role, I teach. So I get to teach an educational leadership class, and I absolutely love that opportunity. And that's a unique opportunity to my living learning community. So
Yeah.
in my interview, I asked about opportunities to teach and whether or not I would still be afforded that opportunity as I move up or what that might look like, because that's an important part of what I'm currently doing. And to a point that you're making, like, I think that it's interesting how taboo in some spaces it can be to ask questions like that because you're asking for something
Hmm.
in an interview. But I think it's important to remember that piece of you're also trying to figure out if this is a good space for you. And for me, teaching is something I needed. I wanted to keep having that opportunity. And if that job wasn't going to give that to me, I might have needed to look somewhere else. Um,
Yeah.
so that was an important thing for me to be able to ask. And the last piece of advice that I would give is that it is okay. And to listeners, I need you all to hear me. It is okay, and I would highly encourage you to advocate for your salary. And
Oh
that
yes.
is please negotiate your salary. If they say your salary is not negotiable, then think about other things that might be. Think about apartment setup. Might that be something that is negotiable? Think about, okay, what is the pet policy? What is the partner policy? What is the relocation budget? There are things that can be negotiated that if you are getting offered a job, it is appropriate. And every job search I've been a part of, they want you to negotiate it.
Hmm.
So I would highly, highly, highly recommend that we all continue to do that because we deserve to be paid what we're worth, number one.
Hmm.
And number two, we deserve to be in a place that is going to want us to the point that you keep making as well.
Yeah.
But with that, that just about wraps up our time together today. DJ, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Noah. This
Of
was
course.
great.
Thank you for being here. And thank you all for joining us on today's episode of ResEd Chat. If you have an idea for an episode or a topic or a person that you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know by reaching out to Roompact. But for now, keep taking care of each other, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.